Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel Kalinati. Today I want to talk about a book that I just finished, that I have very rushed impressions of, but that I totally loved. So please excuse in advance any incoherence as I am working through my feelings and understanding of this book while I'm talking about it. And that book is Jaguars Tomb by Angélica Gorodischer, translated into English by Amalia Gladhart. Jaguars Tomb is a novel that I've been looking forward to for years. A couple of years ago, maybe like 4 years ago, I heard that Gladhart was translating Jaguars Tomb and that it was supposed to be like one of Gorodischer's best works or one of her more critically acclaimed ones, a book that she herself was very proud of and thought was perhaps one of her best works. And I've been waiting and waiting and I finally got it. I knew nothing about this book, guys. I just ordered it when it was available and I cracked it open and it was twisty and emotional and I had no idea that I would love something like this so much, but it's really gotten to me. Perhaps what I like the most about it is the structure, but also the themes of it, some of the symbolism, which is quite powerful, and what it's probably referencing are also really powerful and emotional things. But first, let me tell you what this book's description kind of is. A little bit of the back says, 3 entwined stories form both an intriguing puzzle and a meditation on how to write about or through violence, injustice, and loss. This is Gorodischer's novel that most directly addresses the abductions and disappearances that occurred under the Argentine military dictatorship of 1976 to 1983. I was a bit worried when I went into this that because I knew nothing about the military dictatorship that I would not understand what the story was about. However, I think that a lot of the references here, a lot of the allusions to real events are very abstract. I think that the point of the book is that it is using metaphors to connect with that history and the pain and the loss of so many disappeared people who their families will never know their fates or what really happened to them. That is a very prevalent theme in this book, but the dictatorship itself, that particular period of history, is never directly named. So I think that if you don't know anything about the history, you'll still be able to get something out of this. It's still obvious enough. So, the intertwined stories, this is where things get kind of tricky, and I want to explain the structure of this first, and then I want to talk about the symbolism a little bit. So this book is in 3 parts, and each part is actually a novel or an unfinished novel by a writer who is actually writing about another writer trying to write another book. It's a little bit complicated. So the first part is called Hidden Variables. It's written by a woman named Maria Selena Igarzabal, and this is her story where she's attempting to write about a man named Bruno Seger, who is an author. He wants to write a novel, but he cannot. He cannot get past the pain and the grief of losing his daughter who disappeared. He wants to write a story about a woman who has lost someone, but he feels like he can't get into her headspace. He doesn't really understand women. He doesn't know if he should be writing about a woman, and like where does he want his story to begin? This particular story, Hidden Variables, is a fragment. It ends abruptly in the middle of a sentence, and I think it's implied that Bruno was going to try to commit suicide. Then it moves on to part 2, which is called Recounting from Zero, and it's written by Bruno Seger. Recounting from Zero is the novel he was trying to write in the previous story, and in it he's talking about a young woman. She's unnamed, but I can tell you now her name is probably Evelyn. She doesn't want to live at home with her family anymore. I don't know if she's disgusted by her family, but I think she feels trapped and she wants to do something else. She wants to be a writer. And after a horrible incident where her sister is attacked and stabbed, but survives, she decides to leave, and almost on a whim, almost like a joke, she responds to an ad from this man who, I think he lives out in like the Amazon basin. I think he has like a plantation out there on the river. He wants a wife, and so she travels to live with him and marry him. They're complete strangers to each other. They have like this argument. He's going to leave. She says she hates him. He says, when I get back, I'm kicking you out. Then he leaves. and he doesn't return. He is presumed to have been attacked or kidnapped by one of the hostile tribes in the region and killed. But she doesn't know that for certain, and for a number of weeks it falls to her to like run his plantation or whatever it is, to work with the people, the workers there, to keep everything running, while she's writing the story about a woman who's lost her husband. And in this story, the book that she is writing is called Uncertainty, and it's about a woman named Selena. And then the last part of Jaguars Tomb is, you guessed it, Uncertainty, written by Evelyn about Selena. Now you remember in the first story that was Hidden Variables, written by Marina Selena Igarzabal, so that is the author of the first one. And this story about Selena is, she is a writer, she's had a very successful writing career, and she is an old woman. She's in hospital and dying, and she's reflecting on, one, the book that she never finished but wanted to, which was Hidden Variables, about the author Bruno, about her husband who disappeared and she never knew what happened to him, and then also about an affair she had with a man while her husband was still with her, and what happened with him. So that's the story. It's very much about, in some ways, I think that kind of state of suspended animation where you have lost someone and you can only imagine what happened to them, but in that waiting, in that moment, because you do not know for sure, that person that's been lost could still be alive or could still be dead. Kind of like the Schrodinger's cat thing, though let's not kill cats. And I think that that is the most haunting aspect of this story. For some characters, they will truly never know what happened to their loved ones. I think just that whole meditation on loss and how all these people are trying to tell stories where they take their own pain and their own loss and they're trying to write about it, but not directly using it as inspiration or something to try to work through. But sometimes it's also a block to them in trying to move on past. The other thing I want to talk about in this is the symbolism, particularly the title of the book. Why is this called Jaguars Tomb? The main symbol throughout the book is the octagonal room, so octagonal it's almost round. And this is mentioned in all three stories. The octagonal room has significance for all of the characters. In the first, Bruno imagines that the torture chamber where his daughter was tortured and died was this octagonal room, the Jaguars Tomb that you go into and don't come out of. Evelyn sees the octagonal room. It's the central room in the house that she goes to live in with her stranger husband. And this is interesting to me because while the octagonal room has some real connotations of blood and violence and death and re-emerging scathed, in this story I don't think that's very true. I think it actually is more of a symbolism of home in a way, in this place that Evelyn comes to see as her own as well, where she belongs, and not just this strange place where a stranger lives with her. And then in the third story, the octagonal room is the adulterous bedroom where Selena had an affair with a man and possibly where a murder occurred. And then the octagonal room is also synonymous with the Jaguars Tomb, which I've already mentioned, but also with the, the eight-sided room, synonymous with the eight-legged spider. And I think actually the spider symbolism is supposed to be more memories of childhood, of something fond in a way, because this link is brought up in the final story where Selena is in hospital dying and she sees a spider spinning a web and she starts thinking about things. So you have the spider's web and memories and life and how everything interconnects in a way, but it is also part of the octagonal room. I think this is really interesting. It's a really obvious symbolism. It's very easy to catch it, and it's been a while since I read a book that used a symbol like this so much and imbues it with so much meaning in different facets depending on kind of the, what do they call that, the instantiation of it, the character of it, I guess. I'm forgetting the right word. And it was just really interesting to me, especially once it clicked for me what the title means, the Jaguars Tomb, this place of memory and death and pain, but also something that you can emerge from at the end. So good. So What else do I want to say about this book? Probably the writing style was really interesting to me. I don't know if I would call it stream of consciousness, but in the first and third parts, there's a much more convoluted flowing style where it jumps from word to word, idea to idea, symbol to symbol within the same sentence. And I found it easiest to understand some of the more complex passages by reading them aloud. This is not something I usually do. I rarely read things aloud, but I found that doing so really made it easier for me to comprehend what was happening and how the characters were flowing so quickly from idea to idea, because I think just hearing it or saying it out loud and working on the inflection and the pauses and stuff slows it down and turns it into speech. And of course, we're very good at parsing other people's speech. So the second portion, though, is a more conventional novel style. That's the Recounting from Zero novel. And it is in a more traditional format with short chapters and chapter titles and a bit more, not necessarily simplistic language, but shorter sentences. It seems easier to comprehend on the surface, but I think it has just as much depth and complexity and implications writing under the surface of the language as the other parts do. So what do I think about this book overall? I just admired it so much. The structure and trying to figure out how it all fits together really captured my imagination. I also found I really loved the language, even though this style isn't something that I would necessarily pick out for myself. I really enjoyed it. I really just loved following along with it and seeing where it was going to take me. I think that Gladheart translated this so well, and out of all the translators for Gorodischer's books, she's definitely my favorite one, because I also really love the translation of Trafalgar. And ultimately, just how these stories interweave and how you could interpret what are the author's voices, what are these fictional characters, what is real, what is not. It's so good. So, I probably made a bit of a hash talking about this book, but I loved it. It was a wonderful reading experience. It was definitely worth waiting like 4 years for the English translation to come out. And now I cannot wait for whatever English translation comes out next for Gorodischer's novels. I hope that this will not be the last one for sure. If you have managed to make it all the way to the end of this rather breathless, rushed review, thank you. If you want to read Jaguars Tomb, or if you have any thoughts on it, please leave me a comment down below. And I'll be back to talk to you again soon. And until then, bye.